A man's harsh retribution against his wife and her paramour for their infidelity. This area is a mystery in every sense of the term. Every aspect of it is a mystery. I was caught aback by the odd apparatus in a short period of time, and simultaneously, alarm bells began to sound about the same time. I whispered to myself as I reached the driveway that I was immediately taken aback by the machine. I was surprised at how it worked. It came as a complete surprise to me on the spot. To have anticipated that anyone would be at home at this hour would have been a ridiculous expectation, and it should not have come as a surprise that there was no one anticipating my arrival. At all times, my wife and I are obligated to be present at the place of employment where we are employed. On account of this, it ought not to come as a surprise that a particular automobile that was parked in our driveway would frighten me at that precise moment. My mind was racing with a wide variety of different concepts as I thought about it, and I experienced a lot of this. Do I need to be concerned about the fact that someone has broken into my premises? Does anyone know of anyone who has been harmed beyond the capacity of human comprehension as a result of everything that has taken place? For some reason, I was under the assumption that if I looked through the glass of the garage, I would be able to figure it out right away. In the end, I was successful in recognizing the automobile that belonged to my wife, Taylor. What happened was a peculiar phenomenon. Despite the fact that I was making every effort to avoid thinking about the worst possible outcome, I was conscious of the fact that I was beginning to experience anxiousness. After spending some time wandering around the house, I went inside to take a look around. Having a crystal clear picture of what was going on at this point in time was made possible for me by the fact that there were articles of clothing that had been thrown on the floor around the living room. To tell you the truth, I was a little surprised, and I feel that I already knew that my marriage was finished. I believe this from the bottom of my heart. Despite the fact that I had really hoped that there was a reasonable explanation for this, I was a little taken aback by it. Despite the fact that I did not hear any sounds of sexual activity, I clung to the sliver of hope that she was not having an affair with another man. I was hoping that she was at least not having an affair. By this point, I was absolutely certain that she was having an affair with another person. As a matter of fact, however, I am of the belief that I was deceiving myself in an effort to avoid the agony that was required during the process. I began by listening at the door, and because I did not hear any evident sounds of movement or conversation, I opened the door with caution. I did this because I was concerned about the possibility of being disturbed. The guest room and the bathroom were both empty, despite the fact that the door to our bedroom was shut. But the door to the bathroom was also locked. In spite of the fact that I did not know for definite whether or not they were sleeping with someone, this was sufficient evidence for me to believe that they were lying there naked and trying to have sexual relations with another person. The expression of melancholy that appeared on my face was crimson, despite the fact that I had not yet expressed plain rage. Immediately after leaving the room, I walked to the gun safe that was situated in the garage and retrieved my Springfield. Due to the fact that my finger was suffering a strong itching sensation at this moment, I decided to take a deep breath in an effort to calm myself down. The fact that the matter did not go out of hand was something that I really cared about. Despite the fact that I was not quite clear about what I was going to do, I had the impression that a little bit of payback wouldn't be too much of a problem. I found a scumbag's license and work identification in the pocket of his trousers. Both of these documents said that his name was Kenneth Brightwater. There was no other way to identify him. Following my visit to the residence, I was able to retrieve the identification. The truth of the matter is that he was a member of the staff at the legal business where Taylor was serving as the executive director. While I was making my way up the stairs to our bedroom, I began to whisper something to myself. I was trying to keep my voice down. I tapped the gun on the door frame 3 times, and the sound was loud enough to wake them both up from their postcoital slumber on the chair. I was able to wake them up. When my wife saw me standing in the doorway with a pistol in my hand, she rolled over and yawned in a casual manner since she was surprised to see me. Her complexion immediately became pale, and she let forth a piercing scream of panic. He hadn't quite opened his eyes yet, and when Taylor walked up to me to say something, I gave her a deadly scowl and put the index finger of my free hand to my lips, instructing her to be silent. He hadn't opened his eyes all the way yet. There was no sign of him opening his eyes. She retreated, shaking in fear as she ran away from the situation. The moment he finally seen me standing there with a gun pointed at his head, he came out of his daze and asked, "What the hell is this?" I interrupted him while he was speaking. "Do not speak, you are a complete idiot. If you want to be heard, now is the time to listen, so make sure that you do that so that you can be heard. I am going to ask you a few questions, and if you do not respond to them in an honest manner, you will most certainly stop breathing right now. I am going to ask you some questions. To show that you have understood, you should nod your head. He gave a slow nod while he was speaking. An expression of surprise that is characterized by a widening of the eyes in the first place. I would want to know your name. Additionally, do you have any form of knowledge with my wife? Please let me know. One of the things that I did my hardest to convey was the sense that I was calm and collected. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kenneth, and we collaborate on a wide range of projects. Someone who spoke in a quiet tone was the person who had dreams about Casanova. I apologize for interrupting him once more. I meant to do so. My sincere apologies are here for you. For the interest of brevity, I will begin by putting a bullet into your skull and then proceed to get straight to the point. Following that, I shall proceed to implant another one into the consciousness of my wife. In the event that you are going to continue talking, I will jump right into the meat of the matter and load your mind with further information. To tell you the truth, I didn't ask you if you were sorry until I asked you, and if you are going to continue talking, I will simply continue on with what I was saying. She did not utter a single word for the entirety of the incident, despite the fact that it was completely obvious that she was terrified. In spite of the fact that he was visibly shaking, he continued to nod his head once more without hesitation. I am curious about the extent to which you have engaged in sexual behavior with my wife. Do you have any information about this? This is the third of 3 cases that have occurred. The ability to ignore particulars is a skill that he has developed in order to avoid diving into specifics themselves. What a miracle! Are you willing to admit that you were aware that she is married? Would you be honest about it? In point of fact, I was aware of that very fact. Despite the fact that you are a creep, at least you act in an honest manner. In spite of the fact that you tend to be strange. As your life is in jeopardy, I would like you to be aware that it is not a good idea to have sexual contact with the wives of other people, and this is especially true in relation to my wife. I would like you to be aware of this. Especially in circumstances in which your life is at danger, this is the situation that you get into. Not only am I conscious of the fact that there are certain guys who take pleasure in humiliation and enjoy it, but I am also conscious of the fact that I should not be considered one of such guys. The responsibility for paying for everything has been transferred to you as a direct result of the acts that you have taken. My heels were trodden on by you when you came. This is fantastic news for you because I do not require this, which means that once I am finished with you, she will be entirely yours to possess. I am looking forward to our time together. The fact that you won't have to worry about peeing your trousers every time you have sex with her means that you may have as much sex as you want with her without having to worry about anyone discovering you. Regardless of the circumstances that may be present at the moment, that is not the topic that we are discussing at this very minute. If I don't tell you to stop, Kenny, you are going to crawl over here and lick my shoes until I tell you to stop. This is something that you are going to continue doing if it is something that you want to do. As time goes on, his eyes are getting wider and wider. You and your wife will both be put to death if you do not comply with my request or if my wife decides to leave this position. There is a possibility of both of these outcomes. Kenny Jr., are you able to understand anything that has been spoken during this conversation? It felt as though his drive to live was in conflict with his honor as a man, and it appeared as though he was afraid as a result of this conflict. During that specific moment, I was having a wonderful time all around me. As a matter of fact, the feeling of having complete control over another guy and being able to watch him shake in front of me was one that was both immensely remarkable and motivating. It was true that it was incredibly inspiring, but at the same time that I was getting pumped up by the adrenaline that I was experiencing, it brought up a sensation of excitement. I was going to take either his manhood or his life, but he had already taken my wife and my marriage. I was going to take everything. The two of them were going to be mine to take. In point of fact, he had taken both of those objects without permission and done so. As soon as he was finally able to gather the ability to continue living, he slowly crawled across the floor in the direction of me. He was looking for me. The fact that the rifle was aimed squarely at his head was made abundantly evident based on the evidence. I implore you, buddy, to refrain from acting in such a manner that is inappropriate. He presented a serious nod to the audience. During the time that I was lying on the ground, I was able to record a video of him sneaking up on me by removing my phone from my pocket and using it to film the event. I kept recording him, as he continued to lick my shoes over and over again until I told him that it was enough. I then stopped recording myself. Next, I informed him that I would no longer be recording him. Immediately after that, I gave him the instruction to take a step back and hit him in the head, which caused him to lose consciousness at the very moment that he was lying there in a vegetative state. In the end, but certainly not least, I turned to my wife and asked her, "What the hell does all of this mean? Please accept my sincere apologies, my sweetheart. It was because of the length of time that we spent working together that we became too close to one another. In spite of the fact that I had no wish for this to take place, it did take place. My justifications are utterly non-existent, but with that being said, what are we going to do? It is the very last thing I want for you to find yourself in jail as a result of me. I would want to apologize in advance. As a consequence of the behaviors that I engaged in, you are currently on the verge of falling into the abyss, and I do not want that possibility to come to fruition. Believe me when I say that I love you, even though I am anxious that it might not appear to be the case. Please, I ask you, let's just leave this place alone. The fact that you are a participant in everything that takes place here is something that I have already emphasized. Everything that takes place here is done by you. I am willing to spend the rest of my life behind bars for you if that is what it takes to fulfill your request. I cannot promise that I will not make another error, but I can promise that I will do everything in my power to correct it and that I will always love you, regardless of the circumstances. I am unable to guarantee that I will not make another mistake. I implore you, dear, to rouse your boyfriend from his sleep. It is true that he is a mistake. No matter what, he was never in any manner my boyfriend. This is my affection for you. Because of you, I am willing to spend the rest of my life incarcerated for your actions." She responded to my advice to be a little more compassionate by shaking him, and spraying water on his face. I was surprised by her response. Her behavior caused me to feel satisfied. In spite of the fact that she seemed to be making an attempt to prevent him from suffering any further injury, she was doing so in a manner that did not give me the impression that she was worried about this individual. To my astonishment, I was curious about the nature of the apology that was being offered. In fact, she did not even make a solemn promise that she would not engage in the behavior again. I guess you should forget about everything about it. I have the impression that she is telling the truth. Due to the fact that there is nothing else that can be done, we will have no choice but to wait and see what the consequence is. Just a quick question, would you be able to rouse him up? In order to help her relax a little bit, I advised that she do so. I did not hold her accountable for this minor act of kindness because I was aware that she was not a cruel person and that it was not in her character to cause physical harm to other people if she could avoid doing so. As a result, I did not hold her accountable for this small act of mercy. It was not something that I held her responsible for. When it comes to what I'm saying, Kenny, do you agree with me? Not a problem, my dear friend. At the point when it appeared as though he had recovered consciousness, I went up to him and greeted him before asking him a few questions. His grunting, which was most clearly an indicator that he was experiencing discomfort, was interpreted by me as a positive response. This was my interpretation of his grunting. Kenny, there are a few things that need to be resolved before we can move on with our lives, and it is necessary for us to move on with our lives. Regarding Kenny, I will send emails to each and every one of your office colleagues automatically throughout the course of the next 24 hours on the day after tomorrow. A system like this is one that I have established. In the event that I do not cancel, it will show the video of your face emotions as well as everything else from your Lust for My Shoes collection. If you want to avoid having the cops show up at my house with kidnapping accusations or any other type of bullshit like that, it is in your best advantage to avoid doing so. Therefore, unless you are convinced that you can live with everyone knowing that you are a crazy, it is in your best interest to avoid having the cops show there. The film does not contain any firearms. Additionally, it is in your best interest to make certain that the sum of $100,000 is sent to the account that is specified on this piece of paper within a period of 3 days. Taking this action is something that you ought to do because it is in your best interest. To tell you the truth, nobody wants to have holes in their head that are 9 meters in diameter. Being in this situation is something that nobody wants to have. He was able to conclude that everything in this area was in excellent condition simply by inspecting the floor here and there. That is wonderful, Kenny boy, you are exactly correct in saying that. I directed him to quickly cut the cable links in the event that it would not be too much of a hassle for him to do so. According to my point of view, you have been present for an overly extended period of time today. Once he saw what was going on, he did not waste any time in gathering his possessions and heading out of the room with as little difficulty as possible. It was at that point that he had exited the room. We are seeking for a sale that can be completed quickly. Unrelated to the amount that we are leaving today, the only thing that I need to know from you is when I need to sign the check and when it will be transferred into our account. I want to know this information as soon as possible. In my conversation with the real estate agent, I explained that this is not related to the sum that we are leaving today. Because I have a development firm that is looking for property in the neighborhood, everything should move smoothly. This means that there won't be any problems with the situation. I think it is fantastic that she responded by saying that she will have all of the information that you require as soon as it is possible for humans to have it. Ahead of our departure, I informed her that the moment had come for us to proceed with the $100,000 that Kenny Kidd had so kindly donated to me out of the goodness of his heart. I told her that we were going to continue with the money. This sum, in conjunction with the funds that we had obtained from the sale of our property, will make it possible for us to reside in South America with the level of comfort that is appropriate for our situation. I have no idea where I am at this moment, but I am positive that I would not have been able to accomplish this without the assistance of Kenny boy. I say this with absolute certainty. Exactly where I am at the moment is unknown. This specific individual is so generous that there is no limit to his giving. In spite of the fact that I have a great degree of affection for my wife, she nevertheless manages to maintain a high level of control at all times. Despite the fact that I am not particularly knowledgeable about love, I am aware that when I am with Taylor, I get a greater sense of fulfillment than when I am not with her. For my part, I am conscious of this particular fact. She completely broke my heart when I saw her in bed with Kenny, and I don't want to tell you about it because I don't want to share it with you because I don't want to show it to anyone. Despite the fact that I am a rough talker, I try not to give the impression that I am tough in my behavior. She made the decision to not report me to the authorities despite the fact that she was aware that I was in danger, and it was the only reason I was able to forgive her. Everything that was going on was taken into consideration since she opted to sail with me rather than go down with the ship. This was the reason why everything was taken into consideration. It is best to sit back and let the cards fall where they may go. For the purpose of preventing your second chaff from cheating on you without your knowledge, we would like to make a request that you subscribe to our channel. It is important that you pay attention to the following story because the one that comes after this one is nothing in comparison to the one that comes after it. Make your way to the next story and listen to it. In the event that you are less than 18 years old, you should not even consider the possibility of listening to the one that is about to be provided to you.